every side. In the darkness is the light. Out of the shadows of my life. In the darkness is the light.
Welcome once again to the So Weird podcast. I'm Zach.
I'm Kathy.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Kat.
And today, the inevitable happens. This is a moment we've all kind of dreaded from the beginning we started doing this show, but we knew if we were going to really stick with it and really do the whole thing right, that inevitably this was going to come up. And that is the beginning of season 3, by far the most divisive of all So Weird seasons, and with good reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think over the course of this show, we've expressed before that none of us are really big fans of season 3, and the big tonal change the show would face, the protagonist change, all bothers us in different ways. Though we know there are Annie fans out there, we know that you exist, so hopefully we don't alienate you too badly with what we're about to say. Because I know we all have some real thoughts on this one. Lightning Rod, the season 3 premiere, the last episode with Cara DeLazia on it. And boy, where do we start with this one?
Well, maybe we could talk. Well, we could first talk about any memories we have of watching this episode when it aired.
That's a good idea.
Anyone remember how they felt?
Well, I didn't watch this show live. I watched it when it had reruns. So, and I think I was just too young to understand any plot going on. So I was just like, okay, a new girl. But like I said before, I'm not a hater of season 3 because I liked it when I was younger. But watching now and watching it before we started, it's a little sad.
I don't remember specifically watching it the first time it aired, but I do remember I liked Annie as a kid. I thought she was cool. And from Lightning Rod, my sister and I constantly quoted Dog Jack's line when he was a dog and he was talking to the squirrel, "You're mine, Fuzzbutts." We would always quote that, talking about our dog looking at a squirrel.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the highlights of this episode. I don't have too many specific memories based around this episode in general, but I definitely remember watching season 3 when it was new, and I definitely remember disliking it intensely and being very, very annoyed that Fiona was written out of the show and not liking Annie. So I would say that my opinions on season 3 have always been pretty consistent. I've never much cared for it. Mm-hmm. Or the direction it would take the show in. As for this episode specifically, all I can really remember is as a kid thinking like, well, wow, is that it? Is Fiona gone forever? You know, are they going to bring her back? Of course, they never did.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember watching it like the night it premiered, but I'm pretty sure I watched it around the time it premiered because it felt a bit like Whiplash to me. We had this, great finale of season 2 in Twin, where Fee gets to meet her dad. It's kind of sad because she doesn't think that she'll ever see him again, but at least she has her family and, her passion's still there and all that. And then in Lightning Rod, it's like a total bummer. She goes away. And I realized recently that the reason why it may have felt like betrayal or something as a viewer is because this episode aired 9 days after Twin.
Really?
Yeah. According to Wikipedia, Twin aired on August 19th, 2000, and then this episode aired August 28th, 2000, which is crazy to me.
Well, why was there such a delay on airing Twin?
I don't know if there was a delay. I mean, maybe they moved it back like a month or so. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure I watched this right around the time that it premiered this episode because I was like, what just happened? And I know they were promoting Annie's arrival on the show, but they weren't necessarily saying in those promos, oh yeah, and Fee's going away. So I was pretty ticked.
Yeah, I definitely remember seeing little bumpers on the Disney Channel promoting Annie's appearance, and I definitely remember being disappointed that none of the plot threads from season 2 were ever picked up. Well, should we get into what Lightning Rod is about?
Yep, let's just get through it.
Oh boy. Okay, so the Phillips family are back in Hope Springs. Apparently, Molly is she's getting ready to go on a new tour soon. And that's when the household is visited by her old friend Lisa and her daughter Annie, who is the same age as Fiona. And they bond pretty quickly. But at the same time, at the same night, Fiona gets a visit from Brickroo, the malevolent fae that has pestered her twice before. And just as it's about to leap into Annie's body, it bounces off of her, goes into Fiona's computer, and Fiona and Brickroo taunt each other for a while. And anyway, she ends up reading a spell from her aunt's magic book that starts turning everybody into plants and animals. And it's up to her and Annie to unravel this mystery and revert everybody back to normal. Is that a good synopsis?
I think you just hit pretty much everything.
Okay.
I just want to go back for a minute and talk about the monster of the week aspect of this episode. And that's the idea of the lightning rod being the idea that some people, just the paranormal comes to them. Like lightning, which I always found that to be really weak as a premise. Because the thing that I loved about Fiona was that the paranormal stuff didn't just find her. She sought it out. She was actively interested in it. And this is where I think Annie falls flat on as the main protagonist of the show from the inception of Annie. The idea that she was set up as somebody that weird stuff just happened to. She had no interest in it herself. I'm still pretty angry.
I think it's the second episode or the third where she actually says, like, she doesn't like weird stuff, which is like, what? That's the show.
Yeah, and you can tell in this episode it makes her uncomfortable.
Well, an issue I have with this is the episode really goes out of its way to make Annie a incorporated part of the show. She can bond over Molly because they both love music, and she can bond with Fiona because they both have an interest in the paranormal, though, as Kat pointed out, for very different reasons. And, you know, she can bond with Clue and Jack because she's a cute teenage girl. It's like the episode is going out of its way to make her interesting, to make her cool, to incorporate her into the show. And honestly, it has the opposite effect for me. It makes me dislike her. It makes her seem like an unnatural addition.
Something I noticed is that Molly and Fee both say, "Oh, I like this girl." And it's like, I'm imagining the writers writing that. Like, okay.
Yeah.
The audience has to like her, so let's just keep writing this in.
Yeah, please, viewers, please like this new main character.
Yeah, and Lisa also says that Annie's a fascinating kid, and I just feel like this episode told us more of why Annie is so cool instead of like showing us. And that's not a good way to start with a new character.
Right.
And it's not a good method of writing as an English teacher. One thing that we always tell students is that when you're writing a story, you try to show, not tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just, you know, honestly, I know this term is overused, but it makes Annie seem, you know, like kind of like a bad fan fiction protagonist, almost sort of like a Mary Sue. She's this new character. She comes in, everybody loves her. She's naturally gifted and good at everything. What do we think of Alex Johnson with the Z on the end of Alex?
You know, I never disliked Annie, and I think that's because Alex always brought a sweetness to her. She just seems like a really sweet person, and the character seems genuinely good. So that's all I have to say about that, really, at this point.
Well,
After So Weird, she went on to star in Instant Star, and she kept producing music, and I really liked some of her songs that she sang on Instant Star.
Well, I know she was on Smallville. She played Saturn Girl on Smallville, and she was in Final Destination 3, so she has popped up in some other things I've seen. But I mean, there's no nice way of saying it. I don't think she's as talented as Kara. I don't think she's as good as an actress.
They don't give her as much to do as Kara, though, I feel like. Not as wide a range of emotions.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, and it is true that obviously the scripts she was dealing with were not as strong as the scripts from the first two seasons. But maybe just because I dislike this new character being introduced and the show immediately saying like, well, forget about everything you knew about So Weird. Here's our new protagonist and you're going to love her. That it makes me dislike the character and it rubs off on the actress and makes me dislike her too. I'm sure Alex Johnson is a very, very nice person. But
I guess I like Annie, but I don't know if she should have been the protagonist of the show.
Well, I mean, that's an issue with this episode. Is like there's so much baggage around it. It has to slip out the main character and bring in her replacement. And there's just really no way they could have pulled that off that would have been good. And I feel like the way they did pull it off was pretty awkward.
Yeah, the fact that the guys were over the moon for her, that just seemed really weird to me. Like, you have that scene where Clue invites her to go bike riding. Clue and Jack were supposed to go bike riding, and then Clue fakes a knee injury to get out of it so he can hang out with Annie, and then Annie decides to go bike riding instead, and Jack gives Clue this look like, oh, haha, I get to spend time with her instead. It just rubs me the wrong way.
I think it's weird because, well, I guess at that point, Jack didn't know that Annie was going to be on tour with them or living with them. So it's like they're crushing hard on this girl who's going to be with them like every day. It's weird.
It's just, like I said, it's another symptom of the show really trying to make us like this new character. And I don't think it works. And something else, we're going to be talking about a lot going forward into season 3 is how all the ongoing plot lines from season 2 are dropped. We don't hear any more about Molly's possible experimentation with witchcraft as a kid or her own precognitive abilities. That's all gone. No more mentions are made of Jack's relationship with Gabe. None of the other mysteries of the week that were experienced in the first 2 seasons are ever mentioned again. I mean, that's, as a fan of those first 2 seasons, is really, really frustrating.
And to add insult to the injury, starting in Lightning Rod, they introduced this idea of this mystery happened to Annie in the jungle when she was 3 years old. And they set it up to be like this overarching plot for season 3. And I'm not going to go into it now because we'll save that for the episode when we get to it. But let me just say, after all the build-up, I am still disappointed with how lame her storyline turned out to be.
I mean, even as a kid, I could not give less of a shit about Annie and her spirit panther and her whole grand destiny. Like, it is just the most sweaty and desperate attempt to build some sort of compelling ongoing storyline around this character. And it's not as interesting as anything from the first season. I mean, when you compare Fiona's driving arc as a character, her need to uncover what happened to her father, to continue her father's interest in the paranormal, to resolve this emotional trauma of losing her father when she was so young. When you compare that to Annie's ongoing arc, which is, well, sometimes a ghost panther shows up and solves all her problems for her. It's just, there's no comparison. It's just like one is really interesting and emotionally compelling, and the other one is just lame and stupid, and I don't give a shit about it.
I think age might also play a factor into that, because I remember I was 8 or 9 years old during the course of season 3. I loved Annie and her panther. I loved Annie's music. I thought the panther was so cool. But that's because I was 8 years old and I had like Lisa Frank animal folders. And as a kid, I ate it all up. I loved it. But looking back on it now, it's not enjoyable and it does not hold up. And a good TV show holds up over the years. That's what season 1 and 2 does. Season 3, however, falls flat.
I'm with Kat there because I think when season 3 aired, I was probably around 7 or 8. So yeah, I really liked the Panther a lot. I mean, I've said this before, the themes were simple, so I was understanding it easier. I liked it. But yeah, there's no really a moving plot, just like a panther keeps appearing up until like the second to the last episode, I think. And then that happens and it's like, whoa, okay.
Well, I mean, I'm a little older than you guys, so I guess that's a possible reason why. But, you know, even watching it then when it was new, I just remember thinking, this is really lame, and just hating it and having no interest and just thinking like, you know, I wish they would get back to Fiona because her story arc is so much more compelling. I do not care about Annie and the stupid panther. Could not give less of a crap about that.
I kind of like the idea of the panther, but I agree with Kathy in that there just wasn't anything along the way to keep me interested in the panther. It's like, oh yeah, it kept popping up, but it's not like there were any new clues as to what happened to Annie.
Right.
So I tuned out eventually. I didn't even find out what the panther was all about.
I mean, this is getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but too often throughout season 3, the writers use this magical panther as kind of a crutch to just show up at the end of the episode and resolve the problems. And it happens even here. Like, we haven't even really met the spirit panther yet, but when Brickrew tries to go into Annie, for some reason, he can't. And we would learn that this is because she's protected by this magical force. But it's just another example of them trying to make her interesting and do these things with the character, but the character isn't doing them. The things are happening to her, and it's not really especially interesting.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I feel like they tried to make Annie too perfect.
And it's just symptomatic of Disney's insistence that so we would lighten up a little. I mean, when I first rewatched the show a couple years ago, when I reviewed it for my blog, I said, this kind of feels like, if it wasn't for the big exchange of characters going on, it kind of feels like it would be a goofy season 2 episode. Like, I would say, as far as the mystery of the week goes, this is kind of on the level of Shelter or Troll. People are being turned into, plants and animals. It's goofy, but in of itself, I'm not bothered by it.
It's just, they brought back the people turning into animals, 5 episodes after it featured in Shelter? It's just kind of lazy, really.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, and you do get the feeling that the writers were kind of in a corner here. They couldn't use any of the planning they had done for season 3 because suddenly they had a new lead actress and they had to get rid of their previous actress somehow. And they had a new direction from on high, from corporate. So I don't really blame them for going back to the people turning into animals so quickly, because I imagine they kind of assembled the story for Lightning Rod very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that. But what really bothers me is that in this episode, we see Fiona take out the book that we were introduced in Strangeling, and this is the magic spell. Brickrew wanted her to read one spell, and she was like, oh, why read this spell? I'm going to read this one. Well, how about this one? She picks one at random, and it's in English.
Mm-hmm.
When we first saw the book in Strangeling, everything was written in Gaelic. So to have that abrupt switch, that bothers me.
Well, that's the kind of continuity error you might not have picked up on as a kid, but I just thought it was kind of weird that this ancient book has a passage in English. I mean, but at the same time, it's like, oh, well, the characters have to say it. They have to read it.
Yeah, that annoys me too.
What bothers me more is that Fiona would do something as careless as just read a random passage from a book that she already knows is magical and can do crazy things.
There's an episode where she read a spell and Jack got turned into something and it was bad. So it's like, she should have learned from that.
That is one of the things that really annoys me about this episode. I just feel like she wouldn't have done that. She would have thought twice. Especially with Brickrew in the mix. I mean, why did she even give Brickrew the time of day in this episode?
Well, we do find out that you can contain a centuries-old magical fairy on a floppy disk. And that's hardly the only example of Fiona doing something out of character in this episode.
I wanted to talk about, the character Lisa. Obviously, she was just written in there. She wasn't in any history of season 1 or 2 or in Molly's history, but apparently Lisa's always been there for Molly, even during Fee's birth or when Fee was born or something. And it's like, why would they make her so significant when in season 1 and 2, Molly talks about everybody leaving her and being so sad, and then there's the Rebecca story, but then there's this whole other best friend that's been through a lot of things with her.
Yeah.
Fiona, Jack, Clue, hello, let me introduce you to my best friend whom I've never met before or mentioned ever at any point in my life.
And then the fact that Lisa's just like, hey, you're a musician, my kid likes music, here, take my kid for me.
Molly didn't even think twice about it, really. She was just like, okay, yeah, you were there for me once, so sounds good.
Well, just the real reason is there's no reason for Annie to go on tour with them, but they had to do something to make it work.
Yeah,
so
it's very
I guess,
forced, for sure.
Yeah, forced is for sure the word for it. What do we think of everybody being, like the sequences of the family members being turned into animals and plants and such? Any particular thoughts on that?
I like seeing Ned and Irene, at least, because I feel like we didn't see them that much in season 2, and them being like lighthearted because I like that side of them. But if it was a goofy season 2 episode, I would be okay with it.
Yeah, I like the scenes where everybody's being turned back to normal and Molly wakes up in a pond with the car keys in her mouth. No idea what's happened. That's sort of cute. It's silly, but I can handle it. It's not so silly that it ruins the episode for me. It's really kind of the least of Lightning Rod's problems.
Yeah, it's one of the parts where the humor works.
I didn't laugh.
It's the first time where these strange things are going to happen to the family, and they're going to have no memory of it in season 3. And yeah, that happened a little bit in season 1 and 2, but not as much as season 3.
Well, and it's so frustrating in light of season 2, where like one of the story threads was that Molly and Jack were both kind of experiencing these things more and maybe being opened up more to the possibility that weird stuff is happening. And then here in season 3, it's always just weird shit happens all the time. And the family just goes, eh.
Yeah, they just shrug it off and move on.
Yeah. But I do like the bit about the magic spells being written on the leaves that shake out of Clue's tree. That is sort of cute. And, it is kind of nice to see Clue again, I guess. I wish it was under better circumstances.
Yeah, I'm glad that they had both Clue and Carrie in this episode. Because I really do enjoy the scene where they're all having Chinese food together, talking about stories in the beginning.
It's
That's
Mexican
nice,
food.
Wholesome... Oh, whatever. When they're eating dinner together and they're telling stories and laughing. That's such a nice, wholesome moment.
Yeah, I agree. I actually like that too. It's fun to see the whole Phillips family, so to speak, together and interacting that way.
I don't know. To me, even that scene, like the laughter, just didn't feel genuine. Whoever kept laughing, I was like, that is way too loud of a laugh. This dialogue is not that funny. Okay?
There's just nothing about this episode that you like, huh, Emily?
No, nothing. I'm sorry, guys. I hate this episode.
Well, tell us why you hate it so much. Let us know why you're so passionate.
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to Fee and what her character goes through in this episode. And I just feel like they didn't need to have her give up everything that she cared about in order to get her off the show. And the fact that they did, it's so infuriating to me. So upsetting.
Well, my problem with it is, if they had to find a way to write Fiona out of the show, I wish they could have come up with something better than this. It's very, very frustrating that she gives up her life's mission to investigate the unknown. And she gives it all up because her family gets turned into rabbits and dogs and trees once. I mean, it's such a weak explanation for that. I mean, I don't know what they could have done that would have been more satisfying. Like, unfortunately, it's one of these situations where you're writing out this character we've spent 2 years growing attached to, and there's really no good way to do that. But God, couldn't they have come up with something better than this? Couldn't she have been abducted into the dark realm or something, anything other than her just willingly throwing it all away like that? I really dislike that immensely.
For me, how I interpret it is Fee's thinking back to when she was on the ledge of the building and how she almost died. Not like this whole dog and tree thing that happened. But yeah, that's how at least I interpret it to make it okay, is that Fee, she almost died and she's always worrying Molly. And that's what she says, at least when she's explaining how she wants to leave. And she's saying to Molly, like, now you can worry about normal teenage stuff, which is kind of sad to me for Fee to say that, because it's like, I'm going to leave you so you can like not have to worry about problems that I have for you.
Yeah.
That's really sad.
Well, if they had
Especially
referenced her.
Molly
Okay.
doesn't contradict her on that. That's really isolating because Fee's still a child.
Yeah, and if they had referenced Fiona saying, like, oh, I almost died at the end of last season, maybe if the episode had conveyed that she really was fearful for her safety and the safety of her family, maybe that would have made her decision to give it all up more natural, but it doesn't convey that. Like, it doesn't reference what happened in Twin at all.
I mean, I just think that because when Brickaroo is trying to trick her into not being able to mess with the spirits anymore, he says like, "What would your father want?" And Fee says to protect his family. So it's like, not to be in these dangerous situations anymore. Which, like, yeah, Fee ends up doing the spell, but her family's always in dangerous situations.
Exactly.
So it's like she gave it all up for nothing.
Exactly.
And I
also that note about Rick, like Rick didn't give it up. He kept investigating.
Right. It's just so ingenuine. It's so against everything we know about the character. And I don't buy that Fiona saying like, okay, I'm done with weird stuff now would mean the weird stuff would stop happening to her. Like we already know that there are forces from the other side that are pursuing her. I just don't buy that, her saying I'm done now would make that go away.
But I thought that's what the spell was for.
Was it supposed to close the door to them interfering with her family at all?
Well, if that's the case, it's even worse because then Fiona's had this literal magical book lying around that could have solved some of her problems all the whole time and never touched it before.
But in a way, she was pursuing it because of Rick. But now I guess she's done with pursuing Rick, wants to be safe and protect her family. So she's done with the paranormal.
It's sloppy.
But
There's just no other way around it.
Because from Family Reunion, Fiona was interested in the paranormal for the sake of the paranormal.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't until Will o' the Wisp where she really got into it as a way to contact her father.
Exactly. I mean, it's like everything that she's been doing, her interest in the paranormal, it's all treated as some like dangerous hobby in this episode. Like, oh, Fee, you just gotta stop. This is too dangerous. But I mean, as viewers, we all know that her interest in the paranormal was so much more than that. And it wasn't just about finding cool things. It was about helping people, helping spirits rest in peace. And there was so much more to it. Just makes me sad.
Yeah, it's completely antithetical to the spirit of the character.
So the scene where Brickaroo is talking to Fee, telling her to read the spell, I think Kara does it so well because she sounds so sad and defeated. And I'm thinking, is Kara is she putting her own emotions in this? Closing her, her chapter basically.
Yeah.
Well, it really
it's pretty emotional for me with the theme, Rick's theme as well. I always get sad on that scene.
Yeah, I'm glad they bring Rick's music back, but it really honestly seems to me that Kara just seems deflated in this episode.
Yeah.
Like she's really unhappy to be here, and I don't know why. I mean, like to this day, it's always sort of a mystery as to why she left the show and what made her change her mind about being on So Weird. And I mean, it certainly always seems like us that she basically kind of gave up on acting altogether. I know she did a couple of things after this, but it just feels to me like something else was going on that was affecting her performance in this episode. I don't know. I might be reading too much into it.
No, I've always thought that too, because she never sounds too excited in this episode like every other episode. And her voice, it sounds like she's defeated. But then I don't know if that's because she's playing it that way. I don't know.
The one piece of dialogue I do like in this episode is during that scene where she's talking to Molly. And she makes a throwback to Family Reunion where she says, a long time ago when I felt like everybody was laughing at me, I asked you if you believed me. And that was the one reference that we get to season 1 in all of season 3.
Yeah,
so
they're
I do like that moment, but it's so sad to see Fee say goodbye to her mom.
I hadn't picked up on that. That's a good point. And it would have been nice for them to have a little bit more sense of finality there, that to connect this episode overall with the emotional aspects of the first 2 seasons more. I wish they had done that more. I mean, I wish they had done a lot of things different with this episode, but that especially.
Yeah, it's like they come full circle kind of with that question, do you believe me? But I still think it's really weird for Fee to make such a drastic decision kind of on her own and Molly easily kind of saying yes. Yeah, I mean, at first she's like, no, don't think about, yourself trying to protect me or save me from all that worrying. I can do it, but she ends up letting her.
And like I said, it doesn't really make any sense that Molly would accept this I mean, they say she's not a stranger, but she feels like a stranger, the stranger into her home, and make her a part of her family for the next year as they go on this tour together. And meanwhile, she just leaves her daughter somewhere else. None of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
Also, why Fiona would choose to live with Aunt Melinda over Aunt Rachel when Aunt Rachel was the cool aunt and Aunt Melinda has twin tornadoes who would be so annoying.
Plus, the twin tornadoes would be constantly asking Fee about the paranormal, and Fee would be like, well, guys, I'm done with that. And it would just be a really bad dynamic for them.
Yeah, and her aunt was the one that brought her the magical spell book, and I mean, it's in the lore, it's tier 2 canon that Rick's side of the family is the one that has the weird stuff in it. So it's like throughout season 3, I'm just kind of wondering, like, well, what's Fiona doing? I bet it's more interesting. I bet there are no pooping changeling babies in her life right now.
Then after they do the whole spell thing together, I think after all that happens, we see Annie playing the guitar, and it's like, oh, that's Rick's guitar. And Fee's okay with it. And then
that bothers me so much that Fee's so okay with it. Your father contacted you through that guitar. He said hello through that guitar. Nobody touches it but the Phillips.
It's funny because it actually, to me, it sounds like Fee's voice breaks a little when she says it's her dad's. I don't know if that was Kara or her voice was just faltering, but yeah, I can't believe she would just let this stranger play her dad's guitar unsupervised. Come on now.
Well, the idea is they have to set up the fact that Annie is a musician, that she is going to be our pop star throughout this season. And, I guess this episode isn't really the time to bring it up. They would get into it more in the future, but I'll just go on record as saying I do not like Annie's music. And I resent the show for shifting its focus to this bubblegum pop princess so suddenly, because it went from making So Weird kind of stand out and making it something special on the Disney Channel to making it like every other Disney Channel show. So I'll just say that now. I'm not a fan of Alex's music. Sorry to the fanboys out there.
So was this music like every Disney show, or was every Disney show based off the music in this show? It feels like this came first in some ways, doesn't it?
Well,
I think it came first. Because after that was Lizzie.
Okay, was Lizzie airing at the time?
Lizzie started airing around like 2000, 2001, so same era.
Okay. Well, I guess I wasn't thinking at the time that it was like every other Disney show, but in retrospect, obviously Disney likes to have these shows starring these female protagonists that are singers, and then they have that double edge of, oh, we can sell merchandise for the show and we can sell their music, and it becomes part of this big pop corporate conglomerate effort, cross-promotional bullshit.
Why couldn't they sell us Molly Phillips CDs? That I would still buy.
Well, the obvious reason is demographically, a middle-aged woman singing would not appeal to the kids the same way a teenage girl singing would, and their creepy dads.
My mom would have bought it.
Yeah, so with her playing, Fee asks her, like, oh, what is that? And Annie's like, oh, I don't know. The music just comes to me. And then she goes talking about the stick, like that being such a weird thing that just like she has a connection with.
Yeah.
And we see that stick again coming back like the next episode.
Really?
Yeah, it's the flute, I think.
Oh my god. I never put that together.
Well, and that right there is just another problem with the character. Things just come to her. Like, she doesn't earn anything. They happen. I intensely dislike Annie, I guess is my point.
Yeah, and then, like, I think they talk some more, and then Annie says, like, oh, your ring's nice. And she's like, yeah, it was my dad's, but the engraving wore off. And then she gives it to Annie.
I
This
hate
is the most infuriating part of the episode.
It really is for me too.
That Fiona gives Annie her ring. That is bullshit. That is
It's a family
A-grade bullshit.
You don't give away family heirlooms.
Especially her dad's. Like,
Jack should have the ring. If she wants to give it away, she needs to give it to Jack. Or give it to Molly. But it's not her right to give it to Annie.
Yeah, not some fucking rando that just showed up the other day, you know?
It really is like a random person, and it's her dad's. It's like she just kind of had that connection with him recently, so I would feel like she should even cherish it more. but she's so done with the paranormal. Like, even the ring, she has to give it away. But
Yeah,
I know that she's not, like, that's not what the character's doing. She's just like, oh, here you go. Like, you're cool.
No, Fiona would never do that. I'm sorry. It's just so out of character for her.
And you think that seeing the engraving pop up again would be concerning to her because Annie would be staying with her family and the engraving signifies attraction to the paranormal? Is that correct? I don't know.
That's what I think.
Then it becomes like the end of the ring. I'm passing the curse to you.
Yeah. She's like, good luck.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, we all have a lot of problems with this one.
There's
Also,
some
I
little-
don't...
It doesn't say
Okay.
goodbye to Jack. That bothers me too, that we don't see her saying goodbye to anybody else but Molly.
You know, presumably that must have happened off screen, but yeah, it bugs me that, again, it's such a sloppy way to write Fiona out. Like, they just really half-assed it. It does not feel natural. I will say, you know, 2 more points I want to bring up. I actually like the opening sequence for this episode where Fiona is talking about attraction, and we have that really weird, out-of-place clip of some sleazy-looking dude in a bar. And I do like that shot of Fiona standing in the window with thunderstorm and then lightning strikes and Annie's behind her. That's like a genuinely sort of cool moment. But what's up with the voice of Brick Roo? Like, am I the only one who thinks it's just bothered by that really, really fake Irish accent?
Well, it sounds nothing like he does at the end of Will o' the Wisp when Brick Roo's in Wisp form. So they totally got a new actor, and I don't know. He's very cheesy.
Yeah, and I have no idea who the voice of Brick Roo is. He's not credited on IMDb. If there are any so weird scholars out there that know who voiced Brick Roo in this episode, please let us know.
I don't think we've ever known who's done that, right?
Interesting. What if it was one of the writers? Just a couple of lines of dialogue that bothered me. So the first thing that bothered me, well, that I took note of, was that the first words that come out of Annie's mouth are something about, you know, apologizing to Molly for last time she was there. And then she says, I was just a kid back then and all into techno and French rap. And I'm like, what? Hold on. This is your new protagonist. You're supposed to make her endearing and, like, relatable. And this is what you said she liked as a kid? Like, one of the first things
And
she
the fact that,
says.
like, she dissed Molly's music as a kid.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous.
Though I do think it's amusing because it just reminds me of that brief period in the late 90s when we were all really interested in Europop for some reason.
You mean like Blue? I'm Blue and all that?
And Hadaway and What Is Love and all that. There was just this brief, Ace of Base. There was this brief interest in European techno music in the 90s for some godforsaken reason.
Mm-hmm. And then one other line that I didn't like was at the end when Fee and Annie are talking and Fee cracks a joke about 2 teenage girls fitting all their stuff on the same bus. I've seen some strange things, but that is just too weird.
I hate this line.
Yeah, it's the worst. It doesn't sound like anything Fee would ever say to
No,
me.
never. So we all hate this one, right? We're just in agreement that this is a garbage episode.
Yeah. It was written by Tom J. Astle, and I think that's worth mentioning because he wrote the pilot and then he wrote this one and was like, you know what? I don't care about my main character. I'm just going to throw away.
Well, I would hope that it was not one of the creators of the show saying, oh, I don't give a shit about Fiona. Sure, fuck it, write her out. I would hope it wasn't that so much as, the word comes down from Disney. We have a new direction. We have to change our lead actress. And they were like, oh, God, please go to the creator of the show, have him do it. Hopefully he can cook up something that isn't terrible, which, obviously he didn't.
Yeah, I know. I'm still bitter, guys. I'm still bitter.
The wounds still burn, almost 20 years later. Well, do we have anything else we want to say about Lightning Rod?
When Annie says wicked, that's another bad line.
Well, at least they don't have her saying, that's dope, yo.
Yeah.
That comes later.
Let's move on to ratings. Where does Lightning Rod fall on our personal rating scale? Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
I gave this one when I was sort of surprised to look back at my old reviews and see that I gave this a 6 out of 10 initially, which now seems much, much too high. Right now, I would say I would probably stick this with a 4 out of 10 if I'm being generous, maybe as low as a 3 out of 10.
I would give it a 4 out of 10 because I don't hate the episode. I just really, really like the scenes of Fee talking to Molly and then Fee talking to her crew where she sounds sad. But that's because Kara's acting. Yeah, that's about it.
I was thinking 3 out of 10.
Well, I give it 2 thumbs down for sure. I hate this episode. It's like down there with Fathom with me is the worst episode in the show. I just hate what they do with Fee's character, and I kind of just wish they'd had Fee like fail a few classes and have to stay in Hope Springs to do some extra work. I don't know, anything other than go stay with Aunt Melinda because she gave up everything she cared about.
Yeah, I mean, even if how would we have felt if instead of writing Fee out of the show, they had just straight up recast the part? Like, would that have been better or worse?
Ooh.
Worse.
You think so? I don't know.
Because it's the character. At least with Fee, like, there's a beginning, there's an end, and there's a little bit bad end, but it still didn't ruin it totally. If they would have recasted it in the same episodes that we got in season 3 as Fee.
I mean, that's a good point, but I almost feel like this episode is so awkward and the way they write Fiona out is so sloppy that I almost feel like if they had not acknowledged the change at all and just continued on with a different actress, it maybe would have been less embarrassing to watch.
I don't know. I think people still would have trashed it.
Oh, I mean, of course. Yeah, no. And this is, it's notable that this is like one of the first things people think of when So Weird comes up at all, which is not often, the fact that people usually immediately go, I like the first girl better than the second girl.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Also, I still feel very strongly that Annie was not needed, and Kara could have easily been written out, and they should have made Jack the lead protagonist.
Yeah, best option.
Yeah, that would have been a much smoother compromise than what we got.
And if they wanted a pop star, Patrick Levis can sing. They could have made him the pop star.
I'm trying to imagine him singing Annie's songs.
Okay, so are we doing a feedback corner this week?
Yes.
Great.
This is from Andrea on Shelter. She said, although this episode is not my favorite, I do like the moment you pointed out where Molly asks for a hug from her kids before they go to pick up the cat. Also, did you notice in that moment that she seemed to be more comfortable with Jack driving? She didn't hesitate or pause before thanking him after he offered to drive around and run some errands. It seems to me like a very subtle way of showing Molly's efforts to try to move forward with her life and to not let herself be held back by the fear and pain brought on by Rick's passing.
Well, thank you, Andrea, for your constant support of the show and for your thoughts. But the cat thing totally derailed me because then I remembered there's a cat that shows up out of nowhere in this episode. And
where's the cat in season 3?
Yeah, well, like there's a gray cat.
They moved houses.
There's a gray cat that shows up in the window of Fiona's room, and is that the Phillips family cat? Is this a stray that just wanders in? I mean, where does the cat come from? What is the cat's purpose? Sorry to completely derail.
It can't be their cat because he sees it and thinks that it's Annie.
Well, yeah. So once again, where the hell did this friggin' cat come from?
And then she commented on Twin. She said, Twin is a top favorite episode for me, and I cry almost every time I watch it. Love is Broken is my favorite of Molly's songs, and I think it's brilliant. In the full version, there is a part of the song where there is over a full minute of only musical notes and no lyrics, and it serves the show well for 2 reasons. First, it allows the audience to hear that excerpt from the song during the rooftop scene. That way the audience can hear the music. But there are no lyrics to interrupt or overshadow the dialogue during Fiona's and Rick's reunion. And second, the instrumental portion of the song is great for Molly as the singer because it is a very heartbreaking, deeply personal ode to a lost loved one, and she And should she ever find herself becoming emotional while performing it, she has a full minute to recover herself if she feels she needs to. And in fact, I imagine she needed that minute. There is no denying how torn and hurt she looked during and after the performance. It is an interesting point that Fiona's memory of her father could be considered awful and scary because of the encounter with the dark spirit. But on the positive side, she will remember that her father saved her, and she will remember that she knew for absolutely certain that day that Rick does and will always protect her and the rest of the family. And let us not forget that thanks to Nick, she also has the memory of Rick dancing with her when she was a baby, and it is untainted by darkness.
That's
Wow, that
another
is some great
thing.
insight.
And it just led me to question, now that Fiona has closed the door, does she still retain those memories? Because she forgot Rickario's name. Does that imply that she's forgotten about all the paranormal encounters she's had?
If that's the case, that would piss me off even more.
That would be really sad.
But she does have knowledge of the paranormal still, because Annie, she asks Fee for help. So,
Oh yeah, because Annie
I don't
can't do anything by herself.
Yeah, Andre, thank you so much. That's some really wonderful insight. And I think we all love Love is Broken here. I think it's a favorite of each of us.
yeah, one of the best ones, definitely. And I cry almost every time I watch it, too. Even more so now.
Yeah, I got pretty sad watching when Fee was saying bye to Molly. I was getting teary-eyed. Okay, so we got some comments on YouTube from Wisdom on Shelter. I don't think I've read this one. They said, if we go with Fee being a witch, the cat might be her family or something like that. Also, I apologize for commenting a lot. I just love the show so much. Also, do you think some of Molly's songs might have been spells? The Rock is evidence of that.
That's an interesting thought, that Molly's songs could unwillingly be spells. That's good fodder for fan fiction there.
Do they mean like the stuff at the end that's in Irish or Gaelic?
And also, never apologize for commenting too much.
It is interesting to note that while it's not a spell, In the Darkness was supposed to be like a premonition type of what Fiona would have had to go to rescue her father. And then Love is Broken was another premonition song about the night that Rick died, or Rick's impending death.
I just love the idea that somebody could unconsciously be doing magic by just doing the things that they are driven to do by their love of art or their muse or what have you. Mm-hmm. So that's a really cool idea to me.
Yeah, thank you, Wisdom. And this is from Sarah. She said on Shelter, another thing that's odd about the Phillips family suddenly having a cat is that in season 3, and forgive me, I don't remember the name of the episode, but when they go to that Egyptian museum, Molly mentions that she's allergic to cats.
Oh my God! Just another example of the sloppy ass writing in season 3. They weren't even fucking trying.
Well, I guess that explains why they got rid of the cats.
But it still doesn't explain where the hell this cat comes from in Lightning Rod. But
thank you, Sarah.
Of course.
And from the GSTV reviewer, they commented on our twin episode. They said, what a breathtaking episode this was. I'm curious to see the alternate ending to season 2 and how intense Fee's confrontation with her father, only to be taken away to hell. Then again, I understand why Disney opted out to go with the original route.
Well, they'll be happy to hear the previous episode when it comes out.
Yes. And that's it for the feedback.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm kind of dreading the feedback we're going to be getting for this season, because I know how we're all going to react. And I know that we will probably get some people coming in who are fans of Annie in season 3, and oh boy.
Yeah, but we're going to have some season 3 fans on the show with us. So that'll be good. Hopefully they will help balance it out a little.
So we're not so completely overwhelmingly negative. Well, are we all done for today? Have we said all we need to say on the subject?
Well, I was thinking we could give a shout out to our subscribers on YouTube since we hit 100 subscribers.
Oh, that's great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know what the number is now. Do you know?
Oh, 109.
Very cool.
So-
Thank you so much to
So-
everybody who listens through YouTube.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like always have said, I didn't expect our podcast to really have many listeners or the channel to have many subscribers, but yeah, over 100 it's just really cool. And then to see the views that our videos get, how some of them have over 100, over 200 views is just really, really cool to see.
Yeah, and it seems to me that a lot of people are listening to podcasts and things of that nature through YouTube, which it was sort of backwards when I got into the podcast game. You know, if you wanted your show to be popular, you had to have it on iTunes. And now it seems like you almost don't have to have your podcast on iTunes for it to reach an audience. But I don't know how most people find our show. I don't know if it's through YouTube or through the podcast feed, but either way, you know, thank you and tell your friends. What did you say,
The fact
Kat?
that we do have over 100 subscribers is a testament to just how strong this show was. The fact that it still resonates with so many fans today. So thank you to everybody for sticking with us as we stick up for this show.
Yeah, and if we can get about 10,000 more followers, maybe we can convince Disney to finally give the show some sort of official release.
Speaking of which, another thing I wanted to bring up is that, you know, we've been saying that we didn't think that Disney would ever release any other shows on DVD from Disney Channel, but they did recently announce that Gravity Falls is going to be released. The full series will be released on Blu-ray, I believe, and DVD. I'm not sure. But either way, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw that's
guess.
coming from the good people at Shout Factory. And, you know, we're entering this age where physical media is kind of past the point of being a relevant thing. Like, I'm a big collector of physical media. I have well over 1,000 DVDs. And to me, like, the idea that physical media is a thing that people are no longer buying is baffling. But I think going forward into the future, it's going to become more of a niche thing. I don't think it's ever going to go away. But I think the fact that something like Gravity Falls, which is a show that had a big cult following and a lot of people really, really love and are very passionate about, is just another example of how physical media going forward will be more for the hardcore collectors and the cult following. Because obviously the people who really, really love Gravity Falls are going to want to own it. So... But that was cool. I did see that, and I probably will be picking it up.
Yeah. Someone asked the people at Shout Factory if they would be doing this with any other Disney shows, and they said that the contract that they have with Disney was just for Gravity Falls. So, yeah.
That's so disappointing because, you know, Shout Factory would be perfect for So Weird. Like, they've done so much cool work, so much good stuff. Like, they're people, when they do a project, when they release it, they're really passionate about it. They go out, they make good special features. Like, you know, a decade ago when the TV on DVD market was really exploding, that would have been the time for So Weird to come out, and a company like Shout Factory would have been so perfect for it.
You never know, guys. Keep the faith.
Keep the faith. I would love to be proved wrong. Well, if there's nothing else to say, I guess that concludes this episode of the So Weird podcast. I'm Zach.
I'm Kathy.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Kat.
And we want you to keep the faith.
Though I have eyes, I close them tight. Snuff the candle, douse the light. Willingly I lock the door, break the key to see no more.